we've been looking at these problems for so long, they just seem to keep getting more difficult. What I wouldn't give to get back to the simple problems of debt that we warned about in the late 90s, or
Yeah.
even when we were, because we still have the underlying issues with demographics and healthcare costs rising faster than revenues, that underlying structural deficit that you talked about to begin with, and the kind of erosion of political support that consensus that we needed to do anything about it. But then we have this on top of it, and it's spawned interest in modern monetary theory, MMT, which is, I kind of look at it as it's kind of been a fringe theory, and it's basically that the government can fund whatever it wants by simply printing money because the U.S. issues debt in its own currency, and so what the heck, we can just do whatever we want, and that's always been seems on its face a bizarre proposition, and it's been, I think, rightly rejected. But now, with the debt being as high as it is, it's getting renewed attention, and so I wanted to get your take a little bit on that, because you wrote a very interesting blog about Italy's experiment with MMT. But first, you cite in that blog a difference between MMT and what we're actually doing today, because a lot of people are saying, well, look, we're doing MMT, we're just printing money, and I think you rightly said that we're actually not following MMT, but here's what could happen if we did.
Right.
So could you kind of explore that a little bit, or explain that blog a little bit?
Sure. Well, there's a sort of a traditional Keynesian kind of approach to collapsing economies, right? Which is, you do need to, because the self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak, of an economic contraction is that people start precautionary savings instead of spending their own money, and that just deepens the crisis, because the more people conserve instead of spend, the more businesses go under, the more people lose jobs, and so you have a downward spiral. So to break that, you have traditional kind of government intervention to pump money into an economy to boost it so that it doesn't have a full-scale collapse. I think there's broad agreement in both parties. You can tell by what's happened that needs to be done when you have a very severe contraction, as we're having right now. And so there's lots of spending going on that is aimed at kind of putting a cushion underneath the free fall of an economy. That's sort of a traditional Keynesian approach. That's different from modern monetary theory, MMT, in that MMT basically says you can always sustain total full employment, no matter what conditions are, so long as you keep spending whatever you want and inflation doesn't arise. Basically, what they're arguing is that we need to move the control of the monetary supply out of independent central banks and put it in a legislature like the Congress, and say to the legislature, it's your job to keep inflation under control by raising taxes, essentially, if inflation ever gets out of control. So they're trying to say, go ahead and spend whatever you want, and only when inflation goes above 3%, 4%, 5%, they'll pick the number, then you step in and put some precautionary tax hikes on the populace to kind of slow down the rise. And of course, that relies on a legislature being able to pass a tax increase.
Yeah.
I don't know what could go wrong. I mean,
no, I can't imagine. Congress doesn't look like it has a lot of Paul Volckers in it right now.
Right, exactly. So anyway, I think the bottom line of the blog was basically that Italy, they didn't call it MMT back in the 1970s, but they really pursued a policy of very loose fiscal policy to accommodate, monetary policy to accommodate loose fiscal policy to support full employment. That's basically what they did. That's basically what MMT preaches. It led to, and they've issued currency in their own, they had total control of their currency, borrowed money in their own currency, and it led to wild inflation, huge deficits. They then had to put the brakes on to try to conform to some exchange rate mechanism that they had agreed to with their European partners. And, basically that cascading effect of that decade really is something they're kind of living with still as part of their ongoing problems. And so, the point of the blog really was to say, if you squander the independence of the central bank setting monetary policy, it can wreak havoc on your economy for a very long time. So do it at your own peril, basically.
You don't, you do want to have an independent Fed to do monetary policy, because if it's just an arm of the current administration printing money, it really can devalue the credibility of currency over time.
Absolutely.
Lead to high inflation and all sorts of other problems.